very short agenda, but there's one very long example. And it's long because, as you'll see, I don't understand it well enough to make it short, and hopefully I'll make that point a few times. Usually when people ramble, it's because they don't understand something or because they didn't take the time to make it short. So there's a little bit of both of those things happening. And this is exactly that one. So this is sort of math and philosophy, basically. I think leads you to the conclusion that in general, and you should bear this in mind, when I see people who are verbose, I'm thinking either you don't understand or you didn't take the time. And the first thing is acceptable, the second thing isn't. Right, so that's, if there's nothing else that you take away from the communication, it's worth always taking the additional time. I love these guys. All right, so here's the challenge. This is not people being, I think, nasty or selfish. You're just up against a lot of stuff, right, from an attention perspective. So this is sort of a plot over time. That's just as a baseline, that's sort of the change in cost of money, so that's just inflation. And these lines represent basically what advertisers pay for your attention. So reflected through how much they pay for like a Super Bowl ad, but it could be any big sports ad, they all look the same. And so the idea here is simply that, you know, basically since the internet, people have had to pay a large multiple to get your attention. So the flip side of that is that basically there is less attention. Three minutes and 44 seconds is how long, on average, investors will spend on your deck. 3 minutes and 44 seconds. It's really not a lot of time to make an impression. Right, so in the ad world, 30-second spot is classic TV timing, slightly longer video online, but roughly you're in the advertising business, whether you want to be or not, because that's the sort of window that you have to make a point, or to make probably 2 or 3 points. The way, this is not survey data, this is analytics, watching investors, a pretty large sample. I mean, we experimented with it. There's something called 21.co, and you can charge people like the threshold. You can say, look, you can do a cold outreach, but you better be targeted because there's a cost. Anyways, my main point is just in most of the points that I want to make about communication, they relate to. Don't think so much about what you're trying to do. It gets much easier if you think about how do I minimize the amount of time that the person needs to interpret or understand what I'm doing. Right? If you sort of think about your audience, it will force you to take the extra time to make something shorter. So they went to a show, and you know, everyone was being nice to them, and basically one of the people on the team who was still nice was basically like, we have a shitty product and everyone's being nice to us, right? And so the response was basically, look, we've got to know you over a period of time, and if you say this is going to be okay, or you tell us that you'll take care of us, we'll take the risk. And so the sort of flip side of trust is you're going to make mistakes. Like part of building a company is your equipment's going to land up in the ocean. I'm not wishing that on you, it's just going to happen. Right? You're going to have a delayed project. Everyone's going to have an issue. And if you haven't built some amount of trust, you can't have this conversation. And third reason is if you sort of look at, again, statistics on why startups fail, I would isolate and say roughly half, like if the area represents, you know, sort of roughly the area represents percentage. Sort of more than half of the things are related to communications. right? So like you can, I mean, cash at some point is closing on sales and closing on investors, but cash flow is also a communications problem. A lot of time on competition, you can have a better product, but you are losing because you're not able to explain what it is or what the benefits are. And very often the misunderstandings with customers either not listening or not understanding the actual problem. At some point there's probably an intro email. The other way is to meet investors, but likely someone's going to introduce you. And your sort of 3 minutes and 44 seconds of deck is here, and then you're done. Right? Now we're into the actual communication, and this is where it gets interesting. So someone's going to go and search, right? You're going to get Googled. So whatever is out there, I don't know, do you know what's on the front page of your Google results for you personally or for your company?
Taylor Swift.
What's that?
Taylor Swift comes.
Yeah, Taylor Swift. Exactly. The Swift era. Yeah. Exactly. Actually, you guys are not bad. I looked at you know, at some point someone's going to find a demo video. This could be you applying to an accelerator. It could be a TEDx talk. It could be any number of things, but someone will find a video. Okay, you should check right now. And from that, you know, sort of you end up going off into these rabbit holes of like, who are your competitors? You know, has anyone written sort of great reviews or negative reviews? Then you'll typically get an email with a bunch of questions, right? Really love what you're doing with why is your website site? No, that's typically not the first question, but there's a bunch of questions. And there's some back and forth, and then at some point you actually get to meet, right? So to Rav and Jose, like there's a long preamble before you actually get to express yourself, and it's not even in person yet. But it is on video. And the reason for that, frankly, is that a lot of the people that you interact with, your customers and your investors, are probably just not where you live. So then there can be some additional intros. So typically people are going to start doing diligence. So they're going to say, oh, you should really meet this person who knows a lot about what you're doing. And then there's more email intros. Then maybe if you're on Slack, so this happens with us a lot, we've invited people into Slack before so we can chat. We're going to follow up with people. Maybe you'll share some additional documents. It'll be an in-person meeting, and we'll ask you for updates that you've sent to investors. We'll ask you if you have an online community or if you are part of any communities. We'll go back and forth on a Google Doc, which is effectively the diligence questions. You get the point, right? This is 90 days. Most of what people think about is there on day one, and they don't do anything for the next 89 days. It's like, we'll just sort of wing it. I have some very weird interactions around this. People say, well, can we get on a call? I'm like, no, I don't like to do calls. I like to read, and then I'll send you questions, and then we'll schedule. This is a very good time to figure out what people's preferences are, because everyone's a little bit different. Some people want to meet immediately, because that's their preference. Some people like to read, like me. I don't want to talk to you. I want to read. So ask. Right? You can ask if people have preferences. Most of the people you're going to interact with assume they're busy. So they need options. Don't do things like, can you talk tomorrow? Or here's 2 slots that I have open. It's not about you. Asking for the meeting in general, you want to try and be as accommodating as you can. You literally, if you're going to send something on email, you're trying to anticipate every single question within reason, every single major question. But if I'm halfway through trying to understand what you do and I'm like, you don't know competitive analysis? Like, I honestly, like probably 30% of the companies that we look at, when they see no competitive analysis, I'm like, we're not going to get there, ever. Like, there's no way to get the whole way through the process. If you can't sort of discuss and you haven't mapped out and you don't want to share, there's a bunch of problems and we'll find out. It's huge signal. It's a huge signal. Huge signal. Right? So I just know that we're going to, in 20 days when we get into competitor analysis, I'm going to hear one of a few things. We don't have competitors. Yeah, that's never true, so don't ever say that, but that happens a lot. Anyway, the point here is just, it's like you're going to work on a demo day deck for demo day. It's not the only deck. and it's not the right text to send for an intro. So one of the things that I like to recommend is, as you get further into the process, is going to happen with customers and with investors, is you're going to start to get the same questions. Write them down. Right? The reason that it's worth writing them down is you can go back. It's like refactoring software. You can go back and edit and compress your response until you're happy with it. Maybe you land up with graphics, etc. At some point, you can work it into your deck. But it's very easy to lose track of what the questions are. But it's also hard to refine your response if you're not keeping track of them. Right? So my point is, there's a range of audiences and there's a bunch of different assumptions. Some of this is what's true. Doesn't matter what's true, right? Can you go through this and say, in some period of time, you could make this true? Right? One way, so you said, is like, you look at the team, you're like, of course you'll figure it out, right? I believe, given your background, that you'll figure it out, right? But that becomes an important part. You've at least opened the conversation and said, the reason that you want to learn more about us is the math currently is broken, and we think we can do 2x better, 10x better, etc. So this is sort of the Airbnb, like, very simple, here's how we make money, right? So even simpler math. I like graphics. And so in this case, in general, you're going to be the Hobbit and you're competing against Godzilla, so you've got to explain where your advantage comes from. And there's lots of variations on, we're really small, but this is why we have an advantage, and we're competing against someone who's really big and slow. I have better versions of that. But you don't have to do like fancy stuff. This is just simple bar chart. It's like, if you're going to raise money, debt in this case, right? You can go on Kickstarter. If you look at the Kickstarter fees, 16% of what you do on Kickstarter goes to Kickstarter, right? And so this is a Ethereum. So it's basically an ICO, and they're making the point that if you raise money on our platform, we're cheaper, right? So it's just, again, very, very simple. You could try and copyright your way around this, but it's a very simple chart that makes the point. So if you have the opportunity to meet with someone and you think it's, in general, particularly sort of key customers and investors, get on a plane. For the most part, you're really going to probably a handful of cities that are all good places to be, and you can sleep on someone's couch. But I think given a choice between sort of doing a phone call or doing video chat, I think at this point it's worth going to see them. At a minimum, you've got to track conversations and know how you're doing. Streak has like things like freshness, which is basically just gives you a sense of when last you talked to that person. The one thing that happens fairly quickly is that as you, particularly sort of post-demo day, you'll meet a bunch of new investors. But you can probably feel already that between the introductions that we make and the introductions that other people are making, like you meet a group of people who then introduce you to new people, you suddenly have a lot more relationships to manage, and that's usually a pretty big change. And so it just requires a little bit more discipline in sort of tracking the conversations. This is a easy thing to forget, but trying to use sort of small words. The Economist does this really well. Yeah, I mean, even if you are able to use sort of better words, you decrease understanding. Yeah, cutting words. This is most of what I would say from an editing perspective. This is where I try to spend most of the time, is just removing stuff. Passive voice. This is a challenge, right? Like jargon and scientific words is very, very hard to move from sort of an engineering view of the world into like a broader audience, right? And so it's best to assume that the investors, particularly the people that you start a conversation with, don't understand or won't understand. But typically everyone has a few friends who like is the person that's going to look at your writing and be like, this is terrible, let me help you. And that's a good place to start. And there are services, like you can hire people to do this, but just think about if you have documents, like really the best way to make them better is to just get feedback. I think the hardest part in communication is this, right, which is there's a lot of communication about sort of raising money and talking to customers. There's a big chunk of stuff which is just going to be time wasting. And you're sort of in an unnatural situation in which you keep getting introduced to more and more people, so you've got more and more demands on your time. And so it's usually the case that most teams have not got used to the idea that that means that you have to take time away from other stuff. That sort of, let's meet for coffee for an hour, you don't have time for that anymore, right? Can you come speak at a conference because it's super important, we have lots of people to network with? No, it's not true. Yeah, I mean, it's never true, and you always underestimate it's not completely true. If you get 100 real estate people in a room, sometimes it's okay.